Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Talladega Super Speedway as we prepare for the third race of the 58th season of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series. Last week, we ended up seeing maybe one of the most bizarre finishes. I thought I'd seen everything in this series, but it proved me wrong as fuel seems to be the word of the season so far. The season opener at Talladega, several drivers ran out of fuel on the final lap. Last week at BSRV 3, we had to have a driver make a very last-minute pit stop and just have enough room to get to the start-finish line to pick up the caution and pick up his first career win. I'm Seth Cole, alongside of Matthew Rodriguez, joining me in the booth here tonight. And Matt, with those two precursing races emphasizing so much on fuel strategy, and we talked about it here this season, the fact that the regular season, the schedule's been whittled down from 10 to 8 races. When we end up getting those eventual cautions, because it's a super speedway, we know there's going to be some yellows here or there. How much to the forefront of the mind of these drivers is that fuel strategy going to be?
Obviously, fuel strategy is always at the top of your mind, but you got to think, for some of these guys who maybe a little bit further back in the pack, you touched on it, we've got less races in the regular season and a little bit more in the postseason. Wesley, Nosker, McClure, Seminara, those are 4 guys that I'm looking at who've had really bad starts to the early part of the season and really need something to go their way. So I would not be surprised to see them play a little bit more on the risky side here.
All former champions there that you named off as drivers gritting up here for tonight's 66 lap event. Now, John Godfrey winning the season opener, second win of his career in this series, his first one going all the way back to 2021. Last week, Doug Hewlick, his first career win in the series. Do we keep that trend maybe going of some of the drivers that we don't necessarily talk about in victory lane week after week, maybe somebody else stepping up to the forefront here today?
You know me, I love a good underdog story. Realistically, I'm kind of looking throughout the field. I don't know if I'd be a little bit more elated, but I would love to see Chuck McClure kind of step up here and maybe surprise us.
As they're going to get ready to roll off behind the pace car, Wiley Cope, by virtue of the random qualifying order, is going to have his number 5 Dodge on the pole position. He'll be alongside of Keith Hughes. Saw Keith have a good debut last week. Ended up running up front inside the top 10 most of that race and getting ready for career start number 2 here tonight on the outside of the front row. Brian Schilling and Ronnie Sullins, they're going to be in row 2. Row 3 will find Bobby Farrell and Ron Hagelin. Richard Martin and Jeremy Jeffries, they're back in row 4. And the top 10 going to be completed by one of those drivers you were talking about way down there in the point stands, Tim Novsker. He'll be joined by Robbie Nisus. Joe DeSpirito had a podium finish last week. He's going to roll off 11th. Last week's winner, Doug Hewlick, he is in 12th. 13th place is where we'll find Dante Ricky. We'll look to see if the 84 is actually going to start tonight's race. He was on the grid last week, but did not start the event. He'll be alongside of Donnie Garrett, John Godfrey, and Chuck McClure. They're going to make up row 8, and row 9 finds Terry Bombard alongside of Dave Melson. Top 20 completed by Cy Jones and Grant Wesley. Greg Palmer and Josh Metallic, they're going to make up row 11. Row 12 will be Kelly Causey and Jason Scheck. Row 13 finds Glenn Harris and Mark Paglia. Row 14, Wayne Pribnow and Bob Dixon. David Cannon starting deep in the field as he'll be in row 15 with Bob Seminara. Row 16, Tom Dixon and Bernie Mobbs. And then bringing up the final row, 34 trucks starting tonight's race, Jeff Crivello and Jim Gloud. We've seen here in the past, Matt, a lot of drivers based off of this random qualifying order having to kind of adapt their strategy. A lot of them like to start up at the front, stay at the front, but a lot of times the random qualifying doesn't go your way and you start deep in the field. We've seen drivers be able to work their way to the front very quickly, but we've had some pretty big wrecks here in the first 2 races. So how anxious, if you're a driver back there that's trying to gain points, have not had the best start to the season, how anxious are you to get up there into the middle of the pack, that kind of eye of the storm?
The big thing you got to keep in mind, even if you're on one of those guys who may be on the bubble, may be on risk of putting yourself in a worse situation, don't get yourself in a wreck. Don't change up what you usually do just because you need something to happen. Right now, the best thing you can do, be yourself, let the pack come to you.
Green flag in the air, and looks like it might have been a somewhat late green because Wiley Coate was not ready for it. He stacked up that inside line, had a rear decklet full of Brian Schilling, who in turn got a bump from Bobby Farrell, and that's going to help the outside line. Keith Hughes is going to go to the point with help from the 38 of Rodney Sullins.
Yeah, Robbie Nices did not get going on that restart. And realistically, that just kind of killed the momentum of the high lane and really allowed that bottom lane to slowly snake its way into single file.
Yeah, we are single file, back through the top 15, it looks like right now. Aside from that pole sitter, the 5 of Wiley Code, Ron Haglin's going to move into third, Jeremy Jeffries into fourth, and Brian Schilling into the 5th position. You got to go back to around the 17th, 18th position where you see a little bit of double wide and maybe peeking out 3 wide action. That's Cy Jones and Grant Wesley in that vicinity.
I'm seeing Wiley Coat trying to make a little bit of a charge on the inside, but realistically just getting freight trained by the outside lane.
And it does look like the 84 of Dante Ricky did make the grid, so he's making his first start of the season here tonight. We didn't see him all of last season, so nice to see him back behind the wheel of the number 84 truck, as I've got a couple of drivers that have already, it appears, lost the draft. I saw Jeff Crivello back there. Was it also the 14 of Wayne Pribnow, I think?
Yeah, and Tom Dixon has fallen off the pack entirely. He is roughly about 2 seconds back off of Wayne.
I'll have to follow up on that. That's certainly something you don't want to have happen at a super speedway. Lose touch with the lead pack, because it may be 266 miles in length, Talladega, but it doesn't take long for a big pack of trucks to come barreling down and put that single running truck a lap down.
I'm just looking back at it. I think it was actually just a bad start. It looked like, on further review, it looks like that 45 either lost a gear or maybe missed a shift, but he stacked up the 56 and the 14 just enough for him to lose a draft, and they've pretty much been floundering ever since.
I'm almost wondering, we saw the stack up there at the very front of the field, Wiley Coat not really being able to time when the green was going to come out. Could a ripple effect from the front all the way to the back have translated into that trio of drivers losing the pack?
I could see it, especially if some guys are trying to time the restart and, hey, you want to get the best start that you can, but you don't want to compromise your race out of doing it. I'm noticing the back of the pack, we're going about 2-3 wide back here.
Jason Scheck, I believe, in the 44 that was up on the top side of that 3-wide situation you're talking about. A little further up around the 7th position, Brian Schilling and DMAR, Richard Martin, they've jumped up to the top line. Looks like that's Chuck McClure going to try and aid them. Doug Hewlick, last week's winner, and Dave Melson in the 038. It's got to be such a load off the mind of both John Godfrey and Doug Hewlick, because now that they've found victory lane, they've got one goal left for the final 6 races of the season. That's staying inside the top 20 in points. They don't even have to stay in the top 12 in points to get into a playoff position. They just got to stay above 20th in the standings cut line.
Well, the big thing that I really take out of that is it gives you a little bit more boldness to take some more risks where, hey, even if I do fall outside of this top 12, I still have a chance to be in this. I just need to stay above the top 20. So it makes me a little bit bolder of, maybe I'll be this risky fuel strategy I'm not too happy about, or, maybe there's something that I'm not too confident in, or I want to take more risks. This is your perfect opportunity to try it and say, hey, let's see if it works.
Tim Nofsker in the 088 jumping up to the top to pick up Brian Schilling. Nofsker coming into this race 30th in the point standings. Last couple of seasons, he's been a multi-time winner. He's been in the playoffs, but it has just not been the start to the year that he's been looking for. And, he named off that quartet of drivers that are down below the 12th in the standings cut line right now. Wesley, Nofsker, Chuck McClure, Bob Seminara. We know that when the driver puts on the helmet and that green flag flies, everybody wants to be the first one back to the checkered flag. But in terms of big picture racing, if you're one of those 4 drivers, what are you specifically looking for here today? Are you trying to specifically to get that win and then maybe use the second half of the regular season to rely on consistency to point your way in if it doesn't pan out? Or are you starting on the consistency train here today?
Right now, I think I'm on the consistency train where, we're in race 3 of an 8-race regular season, but I'm not sounding the alarm just yet, because it's super speedways. Anything can really happen. And there's still time for you to claw your way back and set yourself up in a good situation. The worst thing you want to do right now is, hey, you have a chance of making it in, you try something risky, you get wrecked, and you get even further down where you're just in desperation mode. The biggest thing you can do is try to aid yourself so, hey, when it finally comes crunch time, you're in the best situation possible.
Keith Hughes mentioned he made his debut last week, had a good run there, and he is 23rd in the point standings. And out in front leading this race in the early going, Rodney Sullins appears to be his wingman. Now, Rodney Sullins, a couple of seasons ago, he ended up being gifted a victory when he was second crossing the line, but Chuck McClure, the winner of that race, ended up getting a post-race penalty. We've heard it from him time after time after time. I want to go out and I want to be the first one to that checkered flag. I want to do it on my own merit. Well, he's had a very good start to the season as well. He hasn't found victory lane yet, but second in the points, only 9 points behind Doug Hewlick. And let's not forget, too, while drivers are battling to get into the top 12 in the point standings, where you finish in that top 12 also determines the number of bonus points that you carry into the playoffs.
And of course, everyone wants to, it may not have that same luster as the, season champion, but having the regular season championship, hey, that's still an achievement in itself.
And you get a lot of bonus points for being the regular season champion. We ended up seeing Bob Seminara a couple of seasons ago. I think it's either 10 or 15 bonus points that you get for being the regular season champion. And when you consider the fact now that the playoffs have been completely reformatted from what we're used to it being 2 races, eliminations, 2 races, elimination, and then 1 season finale. Now that we know that it's going to be 6 playoff races with 2 races in that final round, those bonus points may be more important than ever.
That's a big thing where you need to maximize the points that you're getting right now. I'll say it and I'll say it again, where right now is not desperation mode. This is not where we have to jettison our entire race to make sure we get this victory. Making sure you finish inside the top 10, keep your nose clean, and try to rack up as many bonus points as you can.
Truck in the wall. Sorry to cut you off. That was Ron Hagler. He's going to get into Richard Martin. Hooks him in the right rear. We've got several trucks involved in the back straightaway. Hewlick, Wiley Coate, Terry Bombard amongst them.
That was looking bad from the get-go.
Looked like Ron Hagelin was either trying to drop back or he got forced to the outside line 3 wide, and there was definitely contact between him and another driver and sent him up into the wall, and he bounced back down, collected the 43, the 23, and I believe that pole sitter in the 5, Wiley Coate, also was involved. Honestly, with how close to the front of the field that was, I'm surprised we didn't have more drivers involved. Good heads-up awareness, getting on the brakes, to not have that be more than a half dozen drivers involved. But caution out 10 laps into this race. Do we start thinking about fuel strategy even this early on?
Realistically, out of this past 2 races is when I'd already start thinking of fuel strategy. I'm kind of looking back at that incident a little bit. It looks like really Braun just went a little bit up the hill, and I dare say that Donnie just saw a hole, he took it, and then once Ron realized what was happening, he tried to cut down, try to get on his door a little bit, just misjudged it, and bounced straight into the fence, and at that point, you're kind of at the wheel of the car.
Also bear in mind, too, that they were almost looking 4 wide. McClure was kind of showing the nose to the inside of Joe DeSpirito, so not certain if Donnie Garrett felt he had to give the 24 a little bit more room there coming out of the corner. But while these drivers can race 4 wide, we've seen it before in the corners, especially coming off of 2 and turn 4, it really narrows out.
If I have to pick one driver who was in pretty much a no-win situation, our last week winner, Doug Hewlick. I mean, I'm just watching him here, has the 43 turned right in front of him. 00 barely gets out from behind him just in time. He slams the brakes, make sure he doesn't run into the 43, and the 10 and the 5 clobber him from behind. That was a no-win.
Yeah, the 5 of Wiley Coate took a pretty good shot into the back of Terry Bombard. Richard Martin, the John Deere colors on that 43, nosed it into the outside wall. Aside from that, it looked like relatively light contact, if there is such a thing at a super speedway, so maybe still going to be up to speed, maybe not going to have race-ending damage. I am a little bit concerned, though, about that 43, because I'm trying to remember who it was last week. I remember they ended up nosing it into the outside wall at BSR, and they were pretty much off the pace for the remainder of the events, and with that front-end contact, I don't know if necessarily Richard Martin is going to be as much of a factor into this race as he was in the early going.
I mean, Seth, my take. As long as the engine's still full speed, you got a chance.
And you
it
know,
looks like Mark Paglia took a little bit of a route through the infield.
There may not be a pit wall here, but pit road can definitely get congested.
It looks like the 17 of Chuck McClure was backwards on pit road.
There's the 28 of Paglia. Like he might have gotten a speeding penalty or something. Looks like he's EOLing.
Looks like he got a little bit of assistance from Donnie Garrett. Just popped around into his pit box. Looks like he tried to get him to pit him in reverse, but they said no.
Like the 39 of Josh Metallic may have just now gotten onto the racetrack. Missed the start. Dorian's got him 9 laps down in the 34th position. Well, follow up on that. Don't know if he's going to be able to get some of his laps back or if he's going to have to get them all back the hard way. But going back to your point, your philosophy of if the engine's still running, you stay in the race. I think that that's going to be a running trend here for these regular season races as well, with just how important it's going to be to get into that top 12 in the point standings. We know super speedways, more often than not, you get closer to the end of the race, it's a race of attrition, and you can maybe vulture your way to a couple more spots, which translate to a couple more points. I kind of feel like, especially here in the early going of the season, you've got to adapt that philosophy.
Realistically, my thought is as long as I'm on the lead lap and my car is relatively intact, when that white flag drops, I have a shot. And that's what you really just need to make sure you have is you're putting yourself in the best situation to have the best shot possible. Not, yeah, obviously leading at lap 35 or lap 50 is great, but, leading at lap 66 is a lot better.
Well, we talk about every point mattering. I saw the Bob Seminaire in the 712 stay out, lead a lap, and then come to pit road. He wasn't running up towards the front of the field, so not giving up a whole lot of track position for that strategy. And who knows, maybe by the checkered flag of race 8, we'd look back here at lap 11 of race 3 and say, that was the bonus point that got him into the playoffs. So it's always interesting to see how things early on in the season, how they translate into either a positive or a negative by the time we get ready to put the playoffs together. Keith Hughes is going to be the one to lead us back to green here once the lights go out atop the pace truck here. We're going to step aside for just a moment and bring you a word from one of the sponsors bringing you this broadcast here tonight, Ultimate Garage Floors. Following presentation of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series on the Flatout Racing Network is brought to you by Ultimate Garage Floors. Ultimate Garage Floors is very active in the garage remodeling community, staying current with the latest technologies and custom configurations so that we can bring you the highest quality installations. As a Northern Virginia Exposy flooring installer, we focus on garages and commercial flooring to perfect our craft and bring you high results. In a space that gets as much wear and tear as your garage, you want to be able to trust that the cabinets and flooring we install are ready to withstand against high traffic and regular use. That is why we include a lifetime warranty with our services so that you know we stand behind the quality of our work. To get started with a free consultation, call us at 540-931-9006 or visit us on the web at ultimategaragefloorsva.net. That's ultimategaragefloorsva.net. Getting ready to go back green flag racing here at Talladega. Josh Metallic was the only driver one lap down, so he will get one of his 9 laps back. He'll be 8 down to the leaders. The remaining 33 drivers, all still running, all still on the lead lap at this point in time. Keith Hughes will be the one to lead us back to green. Rodney Sullins in second, Jeremy Jeffries third, Bobby Farrell and Tim Knopfsker are going to make up the top 5. Then it's Brian Schilling, Joe DeSpirito, Dave Melson, Greg Palmer, and John Godfrey, the top 10. Going to be interesting to see for a number of those drivers. We had about a half dozen drivers that lost out on the lead pack after that initial start of the race. Be interesting to see if they're going to time the restart a little bit better this time and try and keep up with the lead group.
Talladega is one of those tracks where once you lose a draft, it's hard to get it back. It's unlike Daytona where, if you lose it a little bit, you can kind of claw it back slowly but surely, but Talladega is just a whole different beast.
Yeah, from what I've heard from these drivers as well, if you are the last truck in the pack, you don't have somebody behind you to help push, the odds of you actually dropping away from the lead group is actually quite high. So don't necessarily want to be that last truck in line if you can help it either, as Keith Hughes brings us down, waiting for the green flag to fly. Indeed it will. Jeremy Jeffries with a bit of a shot there to Keith Hughes. We'll see. Keith and Rodney, they were working together in the early going of this race. It'll be interesting to see if that 82, once he gets clear, if he moves up to the middle line, and he does.
I will admit, if I was at 82, I'd be a little bit concerned how I'm being pushed on that back bumper. That almost looked like it could have hooked him.
I'm almost wondering, obviously these drivers, they're wise to the fact that usually that truck on the inside is going to move up to the preferred middle line. Jeremy Jeffries knows that better than anybody and might have been trying to force the issue, get that 82 a little bit squirrely to give that inside line a chance to forge ahead.
Gotta play the mind games.
Oscar going to be second truck on that inside line. Joe DeSpirito right there in the 24 as well. It's interesting, the last couple of weeks, there's another series that runs here under RTG banner, and that's the RTR Super Speedway Series. So I kind of look at that race and figure if maybe the winner of that event might be the one to watch.
Look at Bob Seminara making the charge in the top side.
And he's got some friends. That's Kelly Causey jumping up there with him. But it's interesting, the first two races of that Super Speedway Series, it was regulars that we're used to seeing here every Thursday night. Mark Pagley won the season opener, and Jeremy Jeffries went coast to coast in race 2. But this week, Andre Majong, a guy that we're used to seeing normally in the All-Star races we broadcast for RTG, but not a regular here in the Tally Challenge, he went to victory lane at Daytona this past Tuesday night.
I don't know about you, Seth. If I'm watching this pack go 3 wide, if I'm one of those guys in the front, this is the part where I start to check out a little bit, and I'd start falling back because I said, I'm sensing something's brewing.
Well, you haven't been up here in the broadcast booth very often. This is just a normal Thursday night for these guys. They've been 3 wide all the way from the front to the back. They've been 4 wide on occasion. I mean, this is normal. They're comfortable out there.
I'm just waiting for the instant reverse where I see trucks around.
Got Dave Melson, who's now leading that third line, and when that outside line starts to move, that actually helps the inside line. It actually puts the middle line at a disadvantage, but boy, there's a lot of movement going on right now in this 3 wide, though. The 92 of Bobby Farrell bobbing left and right, saw the 77 of Donnie Garrett on that top side. He slid up about a half groove. 22 of Greg Palmer looks a little unsteady.
I've seen a lot of guys really non-committal to their lane. They're kind of jumping in and out. I'm wondering if that's really affecting that top lane, where I think it's the quicker way around the racetrack here at the moment. It looks like it's really moving.
And here's the thing, too. Let's not forget that this is another different thing this season as opposed to prior seasons, where we alternate back and forth between Talladega and BSR Raceway. Now, granted, BSR is a reskinned Talladega, but it looked like a slightly different race in terms of what drivers were able to do last week. So it's not week after week running Talladega over and over and over. You're kind of having to get readjusted to just how the draft and the runs work here at this Talladega as opposed to the track that we were at last week and we'll be going back to next week.
And the biggest thing is, even coming in here, is when you first show up to a track, I mean, it depends on what you've done earlier that week that kind of affects your run. Where, I mean, hey, if I've been running a lot of short tracks or maybe intermediates that earlier on that week, when I get to a super speedway, I have to take that moment of just kind of refreshing my mind how to run this track differently and how super speedways run. Hey, if I ran my entire week at, big tracks like Michigan, or I've kind of been at those speedways where I'm still carrying a lot of speed. Tracks like Talladega and BSR, those are just snap of your fingers. You kind of get used to it, but got to think of some of the newer guys in the series.
Love how your mic picked up the snapping of your fingers. That just added to it right
I was
there.
wondering if it did it.
It did. Got a side-by-side here for 7th. Donnie Garrett on the top and Joe DeSpirito on the bottom as the top 6 or 7 there have gotten themselves single filed out. Good news for a number of the drivers we saw involved in that first and up to this point only caution of the day. It appears they are all up to speed in this lead pack, so nobody got any damage that at this point in time is going to take them out of the running potentially for this win.
Donnie Garrett has been one of those guys that has not been afraid to stick his nose in almost came together with Bobby Farrell on the middle line.
Donnie Garrett, I mean, this season, he's got to have a lot of confidence. He was a strong contender for the past couple of seasons, but had internet problems plague him. I remember back to, I think it was 2 seasons ago, he was battling for the final playoff position to get into the postseason, had internet problems in the closing stages, and had to give up the spot. He ended up missing out in the playoffs that year. This year, he's got new internet. He's not had the internet connection problems that we've seen in the past, and so now he's willing to put the hammer down and be able to, as you said, stick his nose into places, force his way in for positions.
I see he's got that high-speed internet, and he is dangerous.
Coming into this race, 14th in points, so just a stone's throw outside of that top 12 in the point stands. Could move his way into the top 12 if he has a decent outing here tonight. Of course, looking for that victory. Part of the Florida gang. He's got Joe DeSpirito right behind him. And whoa, look at the movement here as Greg Palmer looks around and says, wait a minute, where'd all my drafting help go? He had Rodney Sullins move up in front of him. Dave Melson jumps to his outside. 22's going backwards.
Yeah, and I saw that 92 start falling back as well. He kind of fell into the Grand Canyon. He is all the way back outside of, I really think, the top 15.
Running right there behind Mark Paglia. They both now make their way to the inside line, and it will be Donnie Garrett heading up that inside line that's gotten him alongside Keith Hughes for the 3rd position as Jeremy Jeffries, truck number 1 in P1 right now, continuing to show the way. But we talk about fuel strategy here in the first couple of races. While it's great to be out in front, it's great to be able to get those laps led, maybe get the bonus point for most laps led, and of course be ahead of the dreaded big one. You're using up a lot more fuel than everybody else. You're going to have to be one of the first to pit lane if we hit a cycle of green flag pit stops.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword of everyone loves to be up front, but no one wants to lead.
3 wide again. That's for around 8th position. Kelly Causey up on that top side. Once more, we ended up seeing him working his way to the front with Bob Seminara and co. Now he's charging it once more, and he's got Brian Schilling, last year's champion, pushing him.
Three by three.
That's for about 4 rows deep, and if that high line can get enough momentum down the back straightaway, we could be 3 wide for the top spot.
Ooh.
Oh, little blocking. Oh, putting Causey into the wall is Jeremy Jeffries. They all gather it up. I'm amazed the middle of that pack didn't maybe wreck, but that really killed the outside line there, and here comes Donnie Garrett to the race lead. Inside line really benefited from what took place in the back straightaway. We've got a caution. Caution is out, so it must have been something towards the rear of the field.
Just looking back here, looks like the 14 of Wade Pribb now. Looks like Jason Schleck, Ron Hagelin. Also looks like Robbie Nices was involved as well.
Oh, Jason Scheck. That truck is done. That's a lot of smoke pouring from underneath that Budweiser machine.
Looks like Jason ended up flipping out of that.
Well, that's got a lot of roof damage on that 44, so I would not be surprised. Now, we talked about a couple of weeks removed from having the concussion. Saw him log laps last week. Hoping we'd be able to see him be able to have a decent run here tonight, but looks like that's not going to be the case. Let's go back and take a look at what happened. Question is, was it maybe something to do with the stack-up that took place when Jeffries threw the block on Causey, and it was just towards the tail end of this group?
Yeah, realistically, it looks like it was just kind of chain reaction. Everyone was still kind of settling back out, kind of getting back in line, kind of getting everything reorganized. And it just looks like that Richard Martin has not been the recipient of a very good day today. He kind of got caught in the middle of both the 5 and the 143, ended up bopping the 143 just a little bit, and that sent him all the way up into, looks like Jason, and that's what kind of kicked all this off.
I saw the 17 of Chuck McClure also get a piece of that. He went up into the outside wall, so we'll have to document if he'll be up to speed or not. Certainly pancaked the right side of his Jack Daniels Chevy Silverado, and I think he got some left side damage as well. That was a rather unusual barrel roll for the 44, and the fact that
almost the left tire's gripped.
Yeah,
it was like weird.
He ended up barrel rolling down the banking, and it almost looked like the air just wasn't coming out from underneath that car.
Yeah, it almost looked like a grip flip, but I don't know how those cars have that much grip on the left sides. I'd say the luckiest guy out of this has to be Wayne Pribb now. He just got tagged on the right rear and really just got sent into a spin. Nothing else happened to him. I think he was really the luckiest survivor out of this.
Saw that block that Jeremy Jeffries put on Kelly Causey, and that was a third of the way through the race. Imagine what kind of blocks we're going to be seeing later on in this one with the checkered flag on the line. But with this caution coming out, it's a very interesting time because being a little more than a third of the way through the race, these drivers theoretically, based off of the fuel numbers we have, might be able to one-stop it from here on out to the end of this race. I think I would have them at what, 45? Yeah, lap 45, roughly, 45, 46. They made that pit stop. That would put them right on the mark of making it to the conclusion of this race. But it's a super speedway. We're probably going to have another caution muddy the waters in terms of that strategy.
Honestly, the bigger question in my hands has to be not what lap we're going to pit on, but how pit road entry is going to go. Hasn't went very well under cautions. I don't know how green flag pit stops are really going to work out here.
We've seen in the past green flag pit stops have been a deciding factor season after season after season as to who's going to go to victory lane and who is not. Not only in regards to everybody having big packs coming to pit road, trying to master the art of hot pitting and figure out everybody's braking zone, but we've also seen some drivers overstep that zone every now and then and end up getting a speeding penalty. And that beaten in the closing stages is effectively throwing away a good finish for them, having to pit very late and no time to be able to recover, as we had a couple of drivers come down pit road that stayed out to lead a lap. Jeremy Jeffries was one of those drivers, so I think that's going to turn the race lead over to the 10 of Terry Bombard, who was involved in our first caution of the day. But you can see, as we mentioned, none of the drivers that were involved in the first caution were off the pace. Doesn't look like any visible damage on that machine, so he'll be the one to lead us back to green when we eventually have the flagman get us back under racing here. Well, no surprise, Jason Scheck, that truck was all torn up, and he's made the left-hand turn to the garage area, so he'll be finishing out tonight in the 34th position. Good news for Josh Metallic, as he's going to be, again, the only car off the lead lap. He'll get the free pass. He should be 7 laps down when we go back green. And I'm almost wondering, you know, in the terms of the drivers that we saw just come to pit road, Jeremy Jeffries, Jeff Crivello, Robbie Nisus, Wayne Pribb now, maybe a little bit of insurance with that extra lap of fuel in case this thing does go green to the end, because there's no telling that some of these drivers could end up being about a half a lap to a lap short, depending on where they're running in the field. This is, again, all speculation that we run green from here to the checkered flag.
The reason that I love the Dubo's insurance pit stops right before we go green, or maybe as we're doing under pacing, obviously, A, to give myself a little bit of a buffer where, you know, I can come in the same lap as all the lead guys did because I didn't come in, or I can push it one extra lap just in case there's a huge pit road accident that brings out a yellow. But the other reason is, hey, it gave me a little bit of wiggle room where if I did want to come down maybe a little bit earlier, or if I wanted to come down right at their mark, I could realistically spend just a fraction of a second less on pit road, drive away, and then hopefully link up with one of my teammates to just drive off.
Well, I thought Terry Bombard was going to lead us to green. Nope, he got himself a lap lead, and he'll turn the lead over to Donnie Garrett. We should see the 1 to green this time by. So far, Keith Hughes has led the most laps, 13 in total. 6 laps led by Jeremy Jeffries, 2 laps by Tim Nofsker, and then Terry Bombard, Donnie Garrett, Bob Seminara have led 1 lap apiece. Donnie Garrett about to lead his 2nd lap here with Keith Hughes behind him in 2nd place. We'll wait for scoring to update here when they cross the start-finish line. Looks like Joe DeSpirito will be 3rd, Tim Nofsker in 4th, and Glenn Harris, this will be the highest that he's started here tonight, up inside of the top 5 in that 5th position. Rodney Sullins, Bernie Mobbs, Terry Bombard, Tom Dixon, and Bob Seminara. That's going to be the top 10 as we get ready to go back green flag racing. So, 2 cautions here in the first third of this race. Have we entered into the portion of the race now where it's settled in and aimed towards that potential last green flag pit stop, or Do we enter into that vicinity the drivers like to call the race towards the pit stop, where you pick up those extra few spots on the racetrack and hopefully gain some more when you eventually come to pit road?
Mind games. The strategist, I tell you.
Should be 40 laps to go when we get back underway. Again, all 32 drivers that are on the lead lap still running. We've got the lap car of Josh Metallic and only one driver out of the race. You're wondering where the two previous winners from this season are currently scored. John Godfrey is the highest running of the two. He is in 13th position. Doug Hulick is in 19th place. Talked about the freedom of being able to be a little bit more aggressive when you've got that win in the bank, and those two would certainly like to, for the first time in their careers, be a multi-time winner in a single season. Godfrey had only one previous win coming into this season. Hulick had none. We'll see if they're going to maybe be a little bit more risky here in this 40-lap run to the finish. Donnie Garrett sees the pace truck head for pit road. They got to make their way all the way through this long trioval before they get back to the start-finish line. Now, we've ended up seeing Donnie Garrett work with Joe DeSpirito. We've seen Keith Hughes working with Rodney Sullins. Got to wonder if the 77 and the 82 will work out a little bit of an okie dokie here of letting the 77 come up or not, or will he stay with his Florida gang teammate in that 24?
I think he's sticking with the teammate. I do not see him moving over.
If a third lane maybe forms as Glenn Harris, a little squirrely there in the Krispy Kreme Chevy Silverado, and not even clear off of turn 2 is Donnie Garrett, and that's going to help that middle line as Keith Hughes, rear deck lid, being shoved by that 088 of Tim Nosker in turn. He's got the 38 with him and the 712, some chain bumping down the backstretch, fighting for momentum into 3.
And realistically, I think this is a time where this kind of, you need that voice in your head saying, I don't know if now is the time to really push this hard. And it may not sound like it, but kind of run through your mind a little bit. Hey, something really goes wrong in this pack, and I'm one of those 4 guys that we mentioned earlier in the race. I'm going to be in a world of hurt going into next week if I can't continue this race or even run at a reasonable pace.
Talked about the fact that these drivers, the way they grid up is based off of random qualifying. Good job by a couple of drivers here, a third of the way through, almost nearing halfway, picking up good track position after they did not benefit from the Lotto Q. Bob Seminara started back in 30th, and he's up inside of the top 5. Bernie Mobb started back in 32nd, and last time by, he was scored in 9th. Jim Gloud started shotgun on the field, and he's actually right behind Bernie Mobbs. Last time by, he was scored in 11th.
And you just see the wheels turning for fuel strategy here. Who do you think has the best plan?
I think it's a little too early to be asking me that question, to be honest, because with the fact that we ended up having, about a half dozen drivers come to pit lane there at 1 to green, top off the fuel tank, get that little bit of insurance policy. Yeah, they ended up obviously knowing that they probably can make it the rest of the way on one more pit stop. They don't have to worry about saving, but at the same time, we've seen wrecks take place at the front of the field. We've seen a wreck take place at the back of the field. There's really no safe place to be here at Talladega.
The only safe place is really in the lead, and that's not really going to save you any fuel. But looking back here through the pack, I'm just seeing 2 by 2 by 2 by 2 by 2. But a lot of guys who've kind of rebounded. One of those guys has to be Richard Martin. It's kind of funny, but he is working his way inside of the top 15. He's been involved in both of the accidents here tonight.
Yeah, we have to remember that this series runs with moderate damage, and it's so finicky, moderate damage. Something that looks like it could take a driver out of the race. As long as they've got drafting partners behind and in front of them, they're able to still be competitive. I remember, what was it? It was the elimination race. Yeah, it was the last elimination race last season. We did not give Brian Schilling any shot of making it into the Final Four, as he was off the pace in the early going, and he ended up getting shoved like crazy. Wow. Oh, we got a wreck. Oh, Greg Palmer, Kelly Causey further back.
Oh, might still be a wreck up here in the front.
Travello's upside down. Brian Schilling is involved. Tom Dixon. Wow.
Aye, aye.
Well, 2 wrecks so far that haven't happened at the front, but have caused something further back. That time it was Donnie Garrett, Joe DeSpirito, and Bernie Mobbs that got together. They all saved it, but the follow-up wreck took place further back with Kelly Causey and company.
I feel bad for Crivello because realistically, he did everything right here. He slowed up for the accident. He avoided all the main conflict. But the big thing is, that's great that you slowed up, but you have to be heads up and you have to pay attention to what's happening behind you. Tom Dixon didn't have any reaction time, just drove straight into him. And then past that, pretty much drove straight into the accident. That really just kicked it off even more.
So we're going to show what brought the caution out. We will then go back and look at what might have been a precursor to this wreck. Watch the 4 of Brian Schilling on the bottom left of your screen. You'll see the checkup on the inside line ahead of him. He gets a tap from Bob Dixon. That sends him up into the 00 of Kelly Causey. And there you see, there's that State Farm Dodge of Jeff Crivello up and over. And did it land back on its wheels? It looks like it did. Tom Dixon involved. Greg Palmer got a little piece of it. Palmer might be okay. I think he got half spun, but was able to continue on. Well, actually, he looped it around, did a 180, and then was able to grab a gear and keep going. But let's take a look further up here at what happens on this inside line. And I have a feeling that this was chain bumping leading into a stack up on that inside line. And this happens so many times, regardless of the super speedway.
Yeah, it really just looked like got a little bit too push. Actually, no. I think this is actually a little bit twofold. Obviously, you had that incident that happened between both Donnie and Joe, but I'm actually looking back here a little bit. I think we could also say Jim Gold had a little bit of effect, or Goldie actually had a little bit of effect in this. Just got on the apron a little bit. You see the truck kind of step out a little bit, came up, kind of slowed up that inside lane even more in the front too, and obviously everyone's got their eyes on that big dip, but no one has their eyes on the guy who's slowing down the field.
That 72 was wrecking. He just didn't go around.
Yeah.
He got that left front down on the apron. That is paint grip, that yellow line, and that right rear was starting to come around on him. Nice save, but to your point, that also contributed to checking up that inside line, which eventually led to the contact between Brian Schilling, Bob Dixon, and sent the 4 up into the oncoming traffic.
Kind of just bad went the worst.
Well, we definitely know that these drivers are not in settle-in mode, because that was a lot of shoving that was taking place there on that inside line. It brings us under the caution for the 3rd time here tonight. I'm seeing the 7 of Cy Jones receiving a black flag penalty for something, not certain exactly what it is. If it is a black flag that was received under green, he'd have to serve that once we end up having the restart. You're not able to serve it under caution. And I'm also seeing that David Cannon has retired out of the race, so he will join Jason Scheck in the garage area. Now, the likelihood of us getting 6 more cautions here in the final half of this race, pretty unlikely based on the fact it takes them about 3 or 4 laps of pacing each caution period, but slowly but surely, Josh Metallic is making his way back to the tail end of the lead lap. He's going to get the free pass again this time, and he'll be -6 when we go back green.
Like I said, never say never. Never say die.
He is going to pick up a spot on David Cannon, with Cannon going to the garage area. So what could have been, if he hadn't started the race, a 34th place finishing position, will move him up to 32nd. And we said it before, it stresses being said again. The positions and the points you pick up here in the first half of the season could have so much of an effect on what kind of a scenario you've got going into that regular season finale. It may come down to mere points. And we've seen it before here, too, in super speedways. A lot of fluctuating of positions take place. Sometimes it just comes down to even a splitter at the start-finish line as to whether you're advancing to the postseason or not. And we'll see if these type of moves that we're seeing here in Race 3, if they will culminate to a championship fight in Race 8's conclusion. One thing we have to remind everybody as well is that there is a battle going on here in the first few races of the season to be inside the top 24 in the point standings. Now, why is that? Because top 24 in the point standings get to take part in this season's bracket series. And we, of course, follow that along with the regular season and the playoffs. And right now, a number of drivers have got themselves up in pretty good positions to lock themselves into the bracket series. The 1 through 24 determines the seeds in which you are in, determines who you battle during the course of the weeks here. And Jeremy Jeffries was, of course, the defending bracket series winner from last season. And we'll see if somebody else will be able to topple the driver of the number one here this season. We got couple of drivers that have elected to stay out and lead a couple of laps. Just moments ago, Robbie Nisus here staying out and leading a lap. We had, I believe that was the 24 of Joe DeSpirito stayed out and led a lap. The lap prior, Tom Dixon in the 45, I think he was trying to maybe get a lap led bonus point as well. But now the inverted numbers, the 54 and the 45, will head to pit lane. That will turn the race lead back over now to the 82 of Keith Hughes, who has led 16 laps so far tonight, the most so far of any driver. As a matter of fact, he's the only driver so far that has led double-digit laps here this evening. The next closest would be 6 laps, and that was led by Jeremy Jeffries.
You got to remember, the lap that really counts is the last lap. I don't care how many laps I lead, as long as I'm the one who leads when it comes to the checkers.
So you know what was interesting about this caution? We had the scenario back during the last restart that the drivers could more than likely make it on one more pit stop. They can't make it the rest of the way from here on out, so they still have to make one more pit stop. The problem is, though, they don't have to run the whole fuel run. They could come to pit road somewhere in the next 10 to 12 laps and be able to make it the rest of the way. Of course, I think more than likely the scenario is they're going to run it until it's dry, come down pit road and take on as less fuel as possible, which would put them coming to pit road somewhere in the lap 53 to 55 range, nearing 10 to go.
And obviously, there's a lot of guys who have all these strategies in place. Realistically, if I'm in the field, my strategy, hope for a caution. If a caution doesn't fall, we'll get to it then, but right now I'm not going to worry about it.
Well, you want to talk about some pit strategy? We had a couple of takers at the 1 to green here, including Brian Schilling, Chuck McClure, Joe DeSpirito, Kelly Causey, Wiley Coates. So keep an eye on those drivers here. If we get into a long green flag run to the end, they might try and stretch it an extra lap or two and see if that gains them the track position in what would end up then translating to roughly a 10 to 12 lap shootout to the finish. Interesting thing here, I like to keep an eye on the Facebook group for Rolling Thunder Gaming to get some interesting backstories, and so used to seeing that neon green number 5 of Wiley Coat, the Castrol GTX colors in the field, very easy to pick out, but ended up hearing that we may end up seeing a new livery on that Dodge next week, as he'll be having the black and silver Castrol GTX scheme that Brad Keselowski will be piloting this year in 2023. So we may see that as early as next week under the lights at BSR Super Speedway.
We'll admit that black and silver does look pretty slick. I wonder how black and green would look.
I mean, it's got a little green in it. Black, silver, green, white, red. I mean, it's Castrol. I
prefer seafoam green.
Yeah, but you're part leprechaun. Now, this is an interesting lineup here. Keith Hughes, Rodney Sullins. Keith's going to start on the top. Now, normally, when you end up wanting to pick up a driver, you usually start on the bottom and then move up in front of them through 1 and 2, but electing the top line here is the 82 of Keith Hughes. So is he, in essence, saying to Rodney Sullins, hey, you were pushing me in the early going, now you take a turn out in front this time. Let's see if that's what's going to be the case.
It's realistically, I think, what is expected of a pusher. Of like, hey, you're not going to be leading the pack the entire time unless you're absolutely the best pusher known to man. But realistically, I think this is really just give and take.
Well, nothing runs like a deer, but nothing blocks like Mark Pagley. He just put a huge block on Richard Martin right there going through 1 and 2. That was very nearly our 4th caution of the day, as the top 7 going to break away for just a moment. That's not going to last long. They're going to reel him back in.
You really worked around it, didn't you?
I did. I've been waiting for that John Deere pun all night long. Doug Kulik, you can see right there in the 23. He's now cracked into the top 10, looking for back-to-back victories. You commented on this before we even came on the air. An amazing start to the year for that 23. Yes, he was sputtering coming to the line in the season opener, but a 3rd and a win in the first 2 races of the season for him.
Yep, and an average finish a 2nd. Now, again, doesn't sound that impressive when we only finished 2 races, but you got to think, that's a 1st and a 3rd and a 1st. I think a 2nd place finish wouldn't sound so bad for him.
And, you know, you think about it, too. People might not necessarily...
Oh! Doug Hewlick and John Godfrey almost kicked off the big one, but both managed to keep it in.
Jim Glaude looked a little out of shape there in the 72 as well on that inside line, and that's what I've been noticing here in this race as opposed to our season opener. A lot more dartiness out of the movement of these drivers here today, a lot more quick movements from middle to high, from top to bottom, and I think that's kind of what's leading to a lot of these checkups and a couple of these wrecks here this evening.
Well, I mean, realistically, it depends whether you're used to certain setups of the car, or hey, something changes, or maybe weather's a little bit off, or maybe heck, you're a little bit off today. Just those little factors could just set this car off.
Do you think that maybe the bouncing back and forth between Talladega and Burnt Screwdrivers Raceway, having to kind of adapt back to what you were used to that you didn't do last week, that kind of is coming into play? Because you're thinking to yourself, well, I was able to do this last week at BSR. Why isn't this working here this week at Talladega?
I realistically think you may be onto something. I think what it could be is, again, yes, bouncing back and forth to different racetracks, but the worst enemy that any person has, and even race car drivers, their mind. Their mind will play against them, and it's exactly like you said. That worked last week. Why isn't it working this week? And it may not be that the track is all that different, but it's the fact that your mind is noticing that difference and it's amplifying it and just making it 10 times worse. You're focusing on it.
But this is a really tight double wide formation here. Dave Melson, Grant Wesley trying to get the inside line going. Keith Hughes trying to toe the top side with the 77 of Donnie Garrett, and they were almost leaning on each other 4 or 5 rows deep last time by through turns 1 and 2. These drivers definitely realizing that they want to maintain this track position, knowing that there's at least one more pit stop on the horizon.
Ron Hagelin, he threw that block on Joe, and I don't think Joe was too appreciative of that one. Just
got a third line,
back of him.
Third line foreman, I noticed. Is that Jeremy Jeffries, I think, up there leading that top line? The Eagle One Chevy Silverado. He's got Brian Schilling and Terry Bombard there along with him. And now Hewlick's going to jump up there. Now, here's the thing, too. That third line, they've got to get it formed up like they did right there. The 23 jumped out a little bit earlier than he normally would. The reason being, if he jumped out late, that would stall the momentum. If you can jump out when that outside line's about a half a truck length from your back bumper, you can keep the motion going forward. So we'll see if anybody else from that middle line jumps up to the top. Looks like Paglia wants to go up there, and he will.
Ooh, and I think that may stack up the field just a little bit.
Oscar's going to jump up there as well. Donnie Garrett's not going to be able to get clear to go up there. He stays committed with Keith Hughes. And look at that 088 right down in the right rear quarter panel of the 77. That's really risky off of turn number 2 because more often than not, inside line, definitely middle line, the truck wants to push up.
And that's the thing, you have to fight both the... realistically, both the little bit of a force on the side, but also the draft that's kind of trying to tow you into their lane.
That bright neon number 88 of Grant Wesley's second in line there. Remember last year, he was in danger of not advancing into the Final Four, ended up missing one of the races during the round of 8. Was in a must-win situation in that final elimination race, and what'd he do? He went out and won the race. Well, he's down there in the point stands. We've already documented that. Not sure if he's necessarily treating this as a must-win situation, but if that's the case, keep an eye on him to maybe make a move for this win, as Bob Seminara thought about making a move for a spot inside of the top 3, but no help until now on that inside line.
And realistically, I think that middle line is one of those lines that kind of keep coming back, but it's one of those light switches that can flip it. Hey, when everything's going well, that middle line's great. When that top line forms, you're unfortunately going to the back.
Yeah, and people might be wondering, why is that middle line so dominant? The big reason is because you don't necessarily have to feather the throttle as much. You can keep your foot in it and not get right to somebody's back bumper in the corners. On that inside line, we already documented the truck gets really tight. You have to kind of feather the throttle to avoid pushing up. So as that middle line is more dominant, that's when the third line starts to become more prevalent, with more drivers migrating to the middle line and the checkup beginning to take place there.
I will say, just really watching how this race has unfolded, when I see that one car pull out, I mean, I am joining him for that high lane because he has been able to make that high lane work whenever he wants.
Not sure what's happened with the 84 of Dante Ricky, but somehow he has lost a lap So he and Josh Metallic now running off the lead lap. They are the only two, so if we did get another caution, they would both be in free pass positions.
92!
And we got one up and over. Was that Cy Jones, I think, in the 7, and we've got another caution, this time across the start-finish line. Crivello's involved, Hagelin's involved. Dixon and Coate were down towards the inside wall. Don't know if those dodges were collected or if they were just down there to avoid. Had 3 dodges in the vicinity of this one. Yellow flag waves for the 4th time here tonight at Talladega. And oh, by the way, Matt, it's about 1 or 2 laps shy of being able to make it on fuel. So the fuel strategy games, they're back.
No, we can save that amount of fuel. I'm not too worried.
I mean, bear in mind, too, these drivers aren't necessarily going to be racing to lap 66. They could be racing to the completion of lap 62, because that would be considered the point of no return. Next flag ends the race, so they got to keep that in the back of their mind.
I think after this pit stop, you got what you got.
Take a look and see what happened. I'm pretty sure the 7, I thought he went up and over. No, I guess he didn't. I thought I saw a car, or a truck in this case, barrel rolling.
It really looks like Tim Nosker either really checked up or just did not have the speed in that bottom lane, and then realistically the 92 just bumper grabbed off the back of his bumper, and actually that may have not been as much bumper grab as I thought it was. I think he may have gotten a little bit of help from the 72.
Wiley Coate and Bob Dixon were both involved. We'll go up further to the start of the incident, and that's one of the tougher parts of the racetrack too, through the tri-oval, because the truck's going to be a lot lighter. It's a lot more difficult to line up the bumpers. Some drivers turn a little bit harder into that tri-oval than others do. Let's see if we can get a better angle here with the Bobby Farrell machine. And you mentioned, I think you're right. I think it was a chain reaction bumping that was going on. Matter of fact, I want to go back here off of turn 4, because the 72 was shoving the 92 even at that point.
I don't even think the 72 touched the 92, to be honest. I think that was really just bumper grab off of the 088. I don't think he actually ever got hit.
I think something was up with the 088.
Yeah, he was off the pace.
Was he clutching?
Really early for it.
Normally, visibly, we can see if a driver is clutching. The truck kind of bottoms out. I didn't see that.
And it's really weird. Like, he wasn't dropping speed at a rapid pace.
Right.
But just everyone was past him like he was going still. I mean, he was going 188. Oh, he was going 188, and everyone else was going 200.
Watch this out of 4. Watch the run that Farrell gets. And yeah, he runs into the back of the 088, then the 72's into the back of him. So it might have been a case of that the 088 had no help, and the 92 had the 72 all over his back bumper. That might have accounted for the closing rate. But yeah, you just can't bump in the tri-oval. The trucks are just so light at that point in time, and that chain bumping is what led to that incident. Aside from Cy Jones, again, much like our first caution of the day, looked like relatively light contact, so everybody should be able to continue, but oh boy. Caution out. Next time they cross the line, it's completion of lap 44. That is with 23 laps to go. We will get back green somewhere around, maybe 20, 21 laps to go. That's right on the mark. How far these drivers can make it on fuel. And a big break here for Dante Ricky. Again, not certain how he lost that lap, but he's going to get the free pass, be back in the lead lap, and Josh Metallic will now be 5 laps down, as he will get one of his laps back again after missing the start.
And again, like you mentioned, we're so close on fuel strategy that I think everyone's kind of saving and everyone's kind of crossing their fingers that maybe it ends just a little bit early.
Another driver back in the garage area. Looks like about 8 laps ago, Wayne Pribnow brought his truck to pit lane, made the left-hand turn to the garage, so he joins David Cannon and Jason Scheck. That'll leave us with 31 drivers left to finish out this race. And while we've worked 4 cautions here tonight, aside from the big barrel roll by Jason Scheck, we really haven't seen anybody take really hard hits that was an absolute death knell to take them out of the running of this thing. Everybody else, for the most part, looks like they could still contend for this victory. But we know we start getting closer and closer to that checkered flag, even closer to that point of no return where a caution could end the race. The aggressive level kicks up, and usually more often than not, the high velocity of the impact of the wrecks ramps up as well.
That's it. Everyone's got in the back of their head. They know it's a possibility. But again, how bold, how confident are you that You can make this.
We've seen the first 2 races of the season come down to fuel strategy. Will we have a third race in a row where fuel will be front and center? Oh, we'll be finding that out in just a short time. We're going to step aside for a quick moment and get a word from Ultimate Garage Floors, the sponsor of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series. The following presentation of the Rolling Thunder Gaming Talladega Challenge Series on the Flatout Racing Network is brought to you by Ultimate Garage Floors. Ultimate Garage Floors is very active in the garage remodeling community, staying current with the latest technologies and custom configurations so that we can bring you the highest quality installations. As a Northern Virginia Exposy flooring installer, we focus on garages and commercial flooring to perfect our craft and bring you high results. In a space that gets as much wear and tear as your garage, you want to be able to trust that the cabinets and flooring we install are ready to withstand against high traffic and regular use. That is why we include a lifetime warranty with our services so that you know we stand behind the quality of our work. To get started with a free consultation, call us at 540-931-9006 or visit us on the web at ultimategaragefloorsva.net. That's ultimategaragefloorsva.net. Drivers double up, getting ready for the restart. 20 laps to go. The top 11 drivers did not come to pit lane there at the 1 to green. 12th place on back did. So it's going to be a who's who of who can make it to the checkered flag on what they've got in the tank. If a caution comes out, then of course that's going to maybe completely eliminate out these scenarios. And then also, if we end up having a caution come out during the point of no return after the completion of lap 62, that kind of makes the strategy a moot point as well, because you could certainly clutch and save about 2 or 3 laps under pacing. Grant Wesley taught us that a few seasons ago, but here we go. Green flag back in the air. Keith Hughes has been the dominant truck here tonight. That's going to be his 22nd lap led here in only his 2nd start in the series.
And that's kind of impressive that you mentioned it, but just kind of shows you how hard and how good the talent is in this league, where it is hard to even just lead a lap.
I've raced with Keith in the past. I know that he's got comfort ties in terms of drafting with drivers like Rodney Sullins and Greg Palmer, so that certainly had to ease his transition over into this series, and might be making some new drafting partners along the way. He's now picked up the 77 of Donnie Garrett on that top side. That's the good news. The bad news is you got the Florida gang lined up 2nd, 3rd, 4th on that outside line. Garrett, Seminara, and Despirito. So if the 77 makes a move, that 82 is up a creek without a paddle.
Just kind of seeing, everyone's kind of sitting here waiting for what is going to be the first shoe to drop. Are we actually going to get there, or are we going to get a caution beforehand? And that really dictates how you're going to race, how you kind of plan out this race.
You know, it's interesting when we consider the fact that there were a few drivers that did not come down pit road at the 1 to green. Guess who 2 of them were? The 23 and the 711 elected not to come down pit road. They've already got victories. They can roll the dice here on fuel strategy and maybe have it pan out to their second win on the season. Here you see Godfrey on the top side of Bernie Mobs. There's Hewlick right behind him in the 23. And you talked about Jeremy Jeffries leading that third line back on the last run. Well, guess where he is? Back up on the top side with Glenn Harris and Grant Wesley.
And I still have that same mentality where I see that one jump, I'm jumping with him because he has been that one guy who's been able to really make that top line work.
Got Terry Bombard there with him as well. That's a battle between himself, Kelly Causey, and Jeff Crivello back around the 14th position. And if they can get more numbers, more drivers up there inside that top 10, they'll be jumping up there as well. But it doesn't look like they got the numbers they need at this point in time. Only 3 of them up there, and you can see they're losing ground to the cars up ahead. Dave Melson has appeared to be a driver pretty committed to that outside groove as well. He's now up there. You got the 038 and the 38 side by side. Rodney Sullins in the middle. Bernie Mobs is just trying to find a place in line. That 31's been pinned on the inside line ever since the restart, and he's, as a result, dropped outside of the top 10, now outside of the top 15.
And realistically, I really think this is kind of the calm before the storm. Everyone's trying to see if we can ride out until those last laps of the race, or if we're actually going to end early. And if it ends early, that's when you're really going to see chaos break out.
We are single file amongst the top 10, then double wide for, I think that's 11th, and then it's single file from 12th back to about 16th. So to your point, we're settling in, and that's got to be bad news if you're Keith Hughes, right? Because you want these guys to be side by side, double wide, 3 wide. You want them to mix them up, and well, I was going to say because you want a caution to happen, but there's the caution right on cue.
And ooh, man, Dante Ricky is just, man, that thing looks like a can of root beer.
Well, I mean, it's sponsored by root beer, so. Oh, man, there's the wreck here in turn 4.
Goodness.
Paglia, Brian Schilling, Bob Dixon, and the aforementioned Dante Ricky.
Oh, my. Ooh, that's... Huh.
Mark Paglia, a winner from last season. Brian Schilling, of course, a winner from last season. Came into this year as the defending champ, and what the world?
Yeah, Huh.
What was that? Was that the one of Jeremy Jeffries, I think? Yeah.
That was the one, and the one got hooked to the bottom line, and it's almost like he lifted as soon as he hit the grass, but just didn't anticipate he'd come back up on track, and man, he came up there like a bowling pin.
Did he get bumped?
He did. I think he got bumped by the 88 or 8.
Are we sure about this? That almost, to me, looked like it might have been like a game freezing or something maybe as far as like a sim rig or something, because the bump looks square from Glenn Harris. There was no checkup there. That looks a little more untoward, and oh gosh, and then Bob Dixon just finishes off Brian Schilling, flips him over.
I said that was just a really bad angle.
Let's take a look from the helicopter cam and just see if the bumpers were square, because the thing that stands out to me here as well is the fact that the one didn't seem to really decrease in speed. If he was in control, he would have been on the brakes trying to make sure that thing didn't come back up into traffic. And I didn't see really a huge change in deacceleration. So that says to me he wasn't in control of the truck at the time.
It's funny you mentioned he lifts a little bit after he gets bumped by the 8, goes down, stays about 190, and then starts slowing down. And by the time he gets to the grass, he's at 168. And comes back up on the track. So definitely a weird one. I think we're going to need to look at that more post-race.
Yeah, that is a very, very strange wreck right there. It did see with the aerial view, it looked like there was checkup, but again, it didn't look like the hit was strong enough that it should have shot the car to the left like that. That's the thing that really kind of stands out to me. Mark Paglia, though, involved. Bob Dixon involved. Let's get another look at it here if we can. Watch when the one gets to the back of the 00 right there, checks up a little bit. See, to me, if there had actually been like a really bad bump, the one would have jumped out to the left a lot more violently than it did. It seemed a little too smooth, so I don't know.
I said really sure. It looked weird to me, but I don't know.
Tough break there for a number of other drivers that were collected up. Schilling and Dixon, Paglia. Oh, there's the hit from Bob Dixon into Brian Schilling. That may be the day done for Brian Schilling. Dante Ricci there making his first start of the season involved as well. And, well, now I believe that if you elected to not come to pit road at the 1 degree under the last caution period, you're golden to make it the rest of the way because you've got about 2, 3, maybe even 4 laps of pacing to save fuel. I don't think that anybody's going to have to come to pit lane again for the remainder of this race outside of repairing crash damage. Like Schilling and Ricci, they came to pit road to repair damage from the incident. Saw the pole sitter Wiley Coates sitting on pit lane. Not certain what's going on with. Yeah, I'm not certain what's going on there. Like he has returned. Oh no! Mechanical issue. Engine header on the 5 car.
Oh. You know, kind of looking at that reliability issue makes me wonder a little bit more about Nosker.
Yeah, you were talking about that under our commercial break, how it just looked like the 088 was slightly off the pace.
Just something looks off.
He is at the tail end of the field right now. Let's see if we can pinpoint where the mechanical issue happened for the 5 of Wiley Coate. Got the benefit of the pole via the Lotto Q, and definitely not the run he was looking for here in terms of finish. Like it was right here.
Oh, as soon as he caught up to the pack, it just let go.
Here it is. It was over in the middle of 3 and 4 that the engine lets go here. Now he does have some damage on the left side of his machine. Cross the line in the 25th position, and let's see if we can.
I'll tell you that.
See a downshift maybe here, a money shift perhaps.
That realistically just looks like bad luck.
Right about here, you're going to see the smoke pouring out from underneath his Dodge Ram, and yeah, right there, smoke starts pouring out. Yeah, that looks like, you know, unfortunately in super speedway races, sometimes you just end up getting those random engine failures, and I think that was what happened right there, because it didn't look like there was any money shift or anything like that that would have led to the engine going south. I fell prey to one of those random engine failures just last week, so that's the tough thing about these super speedway races is sometimes you can have a really good day going, and then from out of nowhere, the engine just decides it wants to quit for no apparent reason.
Well, those are the pains of racing where, you know, hey, you can run the entire race perfectly, but, you know, just one thing can take you out of it.
Now, it does not show up as a DNF on the scoring, but I believe the 45 of Tom Dixon may be out of the race. He is scored in the 31st position, and he was losing laps every lap that we turned into the last green flag run, so that's another spot that Josh Metallic was able to pick up, and you see him going around to get yet another lap back. He is going to be 4 laps down now. He started out this evening 9 laps down, so by virtue of these 5 cautions we've had, he's gotten more than half of his laps back. Unlikely he's going to get 4 more cautions here in the final 12 laps of this race, but the good news is, as we've documented, drivers have retired out of the race. He's been able to at least have a positive net gain of what might have been had he not started this evening's festivities.
And like I said, this is where the battle of attrition starts, I feel.
So remember, these drivers may be racing only to the conclusion of lap 62. We ended up seeing last week at Burnt Screwdrivers Raceway, the race ended under caution. By virtue of being the first car to the start-finish line to pick up the pace truck, Doug Hewlick ended up winning that race. Now, we won't have a scenario like that here this week because everybody should be able to make it the rest of the way on fuel. This may be the first race where we're not really going to have to discuss fuel strategy in the closing stages. So now, to your point, it really just comes down to who's got the strongest truck, who's got the right drafting partners, and who makes the right move at the end. The thing we might talk mostly about here in the closing stages is the aggressiveness of blocking, because we know that if you can get the right number of drivers in any given line you can have a lot of momentum and move your way to the front, and you can guarantee the front runners, they're going to keep an eye on that and try and stall that momentum out.
Just looking at this here, and I'm just trying to make a guess of who has the best strategy. A guy that I'm definitely looking at, or at least two guys I'm looking at. Richard Martin, man, has been through the war.
He has.
And he has come out on top. But also, I'm not rolling out that 23 car.
Kulik trying to start out the season maybe with 3 straight podium finishes. I don't think a driver's ever done that before. I'd have to look back through the history books and see if that is the case. But here we go. It'll be 12 laps remaining here tonight at Talladega Superspeedway. Keith Hughes, the leader, chose the top side here for the restart that yields the inside line to the 77 of Donnie Garrett, who got a shove, almost got spun out by Bob Seminara.
I mean, it's go time. It's go time.
77's going to get clear. Does he move up? He does. He'll move up to that middle line, pick up Keith Hughes. That's going to leave Bob Seminara with Richard Martin on the inside line, and keep an eye towards the back of the pack, because if a third line forms, that's where it's going to generate.
I'm seeing that inside line is getting a bit of gusto back, but I just don't think they're as built up as they are in that high lane, because I'm seeing Rodney Solons, he really dropped back. It looks like he's trying to get in that high lane.
Number of drivers up here that it's been a while since their last victory here in the Talladega Challenge Series. Donnie Garrett, Bob Seminara, Richard Martin. They would love to be able to get back to victory lane, but I'm also seeing, we talked about the Cinderella stories here to start out the year. A couple of them could be formulating in tonight's race. You got Keith Hughes, his second start, running in second place. I also see that 22 of Greg Palmer, that Hooters Flames number 22 Chevrolet, lined up in the 6th position, looking for his first career win in the Tally Challenge.
Well, I said, right now it seems like everyone's playing nice, but I'm wondering, as soon as we get to the point of no return, how are we going to start racing?
Top 7 or 8 have gotten themselves single-filed out. Kelly Causey and Richard Martin side by side. That's going to be, I believe, for the 10th spot. Give it to Causey as he'll swing around the 43. Martin trying to find a place in line. Looks like he will, just in front of the 23 of Doug Hulick and behind the 92 of Bobby Farrell. So now we've got them all single-filed out back to about, what is that, the 20th position, I think. When does the line form? When do these drivers start to get antsy and get tired of the checkup in that middle line?
Maybe I wrote off Tim Nosker too early. Looks like him and both Jeremy Jeffries are kind of making that bottom line work. Well, at least it was kind of working.
Yeah, they've now picked up another truck. I believe that's Jim Gloud in the 72. You've also got, I believe I saw Chuck McClure diving down there to that inside line also. So some fast trucks on that bottom line. We'll see if they can make something happen. The shorter way around the racetrack, but not necessarily the fastest in terms of how we've seen it, the racing here in the Tally Challenge.
And right now, I think it may be fear that's kind of motivating a lot of these guys to the middle lane, because you're seeing all the trucks right around the middle. And yeah, everyone wants to kind of start working their way up the field, but if you hop in the bottom lane, you're kind of trapped. If you hop in the top lane, one of these cars pulls up or down, you are trapped.
Greg Palmer, a little bit of daylight there between himself and John Godfrey for the 5th position. If they get a run, does the 22 make a move? He's got Dave Melson there with him. Grant Wesley in line, Rodney Sullins, Kelly Causey there as well. Starting to see a little bit of movement up to that third line. I think that was that the 1 truck again, I think, that was moving up there? No, that was actually the 10 of Terry Bombard and the 28 of Mark Paglia. They're just not getting the numbers. Now an inside line's forming. Richard Martin, Bernie Mobbs down there.
I think they finally got enough momentum.
Yeah, they're suddenly starting to formulate the numbers down there. They're realizing it's time to go. We're getting to that point of no return.
And just making sure you're in that situation. Not that you really need to drive to the front, but as long as you're in that top 5, top 10, you have a great shot of making that last lap charge.
A battle right now for the 11th position between Richard Martin and Kelly Causey. And now Nofsker bails out. He goes up to the middle line behind Doug Kulik in front of Terry Bombard. So now what was about 5 or 6 trucks on the inside line has been dwindled down in half to 3. But Martin's still foraging ahead. He's going to get the run on entry. He'll pull alongside of the truck he's battling, but then it's here off of turn 4 or off of turn 2 down the straightaway. They lose all that ground that they made up in the corner.
Just seeing, it looks like everyone's kind of divided on lines. I will say, it seems like a lot of the field is just kind of scared to branch out.
Donnie Garrett continuing to show the way. Now you got Dave Melson, who stepped out to the inside line. That's alongside of Greg Palmer. He's picked up Rodney Sullins, Kelly Causey, and in turn, now they've latched on with that group led by Richard Martin. This is going to be a battle for the 7th position going into turn 3, and now Wesley jumps down there as well.
I said, I think this is when it starts shaking up. We're almost at that point of no return.
Now, are we still at the point where you're trying to find your friends, or are we at the every man for himself point in this race?
We're not exactly in that, hey, point of no return, but I really think that, hey, the friends that you have around you or what you're kind of working with here at the moment, you're trying to hit some of them up, make deals, or say, hey, remember when I did this for you? Remember when we worked together here? We were great, right?
Remember, if a caution comes out at this point, we would get back green with more than likely a green-white checkered, maybe a one-lap shootout, since we do have lap truck still. That being the four laps down, number 39 of Josh Metallic. But Donnie Garrett's going to have to do a lot of mirror driving here because, obviously, I believe the 712, the 24, they'd be in communication with each other, but he has no idea when and if the 82 might make a move and if anybody would go with him.
It's the main thing is, like, you cannot wait till the last corner, the last lap to do this. I mean, you kind of need to get this going early because you need to see who really is going with you, but it's also making sure that you can talk enough of these guys and saying, hey, if I pull out, are you willing to go with me, or am I just going to pull out and I'm going to get freight trained?
Well, 3 races will be in the books at the conclusion of this one. Will we have 3 different drivers going to victory lane? Right now, the answer would be yes. You got to go quite a ways back there to Doug Hewlick, who I believe is mired in the... Actually, no, John Godfrey. I just noticed is up here in the 5th position. I get that 712 and 711 mixed up so many times. I know that they've got the color differential, but I still get them mixed up in my head. So there is still the chance that we could have a multi-time winner here this season if that 711 can make the right moves.
Just kind of looking out. Everyone's kind of... I'd be kind of interested to see after this lap how much we start to fan out, or if we begin to fan out until that final lap.
And here's the thing, too. You don't know if this race is going to end under caution. You don't know at what point of the racetrack that caution could fly. It could be through the tri-oval where it's too late to make a move. So when is too soon? When is too late? These drivers are having to play a guessing game right now on whether the caution will rear its ugly head or if we'll stay clean and green to the finish.
Realistically, my favorite place to be in these kind of scenarios is on that bottom line, or maybe, hey, side by side, but at least I'm on that bottom line. It'd be 2 or 3 cars back of the leader, because realistically, if something happens, I've got roughly maybe a second or 2 to make myself at least hop on that apron or try to ride the apron past any wreck or past anything that happens. But additionally, hey, it gives me that little bit of time where I can start working my way up the pack until that last lap where I'm hopefully fighting the leaders or right behind the leader.
3 laps to go. We've seen an... Oh, we got a contact and we've got a wreck, I believe. Yes, 72 is around. 17's in the wall. Caution's out. We're racing back to finish out this race. Keith Hughes, does he make a move on the back straightaway here on Donnie Garrett? How long does he wait?
I don't think a lot of these guys know it's caution, or they may just not have anything for him.
Here comes Godfrey. He's going to lead Greg Palmer. Keith Hughes looking to go down low there, maybe pick up the 711. Trying to set up a pass maybe here through the tri-oval. We're racing back to the proverbial checkered flag. He's looking top. Not enough momentum. Godfrey forces him up high. Donnie Garrett's going to make that 77 wide, and he's going to lead them back to the line. Barring any issues here under the final 2 laps of pacing, Donnie Garrett has picked up his first win on the season under caution in race number 3.
I was looking at Keith Hughes, and man, he blew a huge opportunity.
You have to wonder if maybe Keith Hughes was a little tentative to make a move, knowing that the 712 and the 24 were behind him and might not have gone with him if he had jumped out. Might have been content to just ride in that and finish in that 2nd position, perhaps.
I realistically say that, hey, at worst, hey, I don't finish up in the top of the field, but, you got to try something.
White flag will be displayed this next time by. We'll see if we've got enough time to go back and show you the race-ending caution. A driver that was in the middle of it, Chuck McClure, who is out of the race. We talked about a handful of drivers, big-name drivers, former champions that were below the cut line. It's going to be another poor performance for the 17, who I think in this case, had nowhere to go. This starts, I believe, with the 72 of Jim Glaude going into turn 1. We had some door banging. That did not go well. Jeremy Jeffries and Jim Glaude. Oh, and then Mark Paglia nowhere to go. There's McClure, Terry Bombard. Now pretty much anybody that was running further back than 25th got a piece of this. Bombard's barrel rolling, McClure's barrel rolling. Dixon, there's Crivello hitting the inside steel guardrail, Armco barrier. Dante Ricky in the 84. Ty Jones got a piece of it. Brian Schilling, last year's champion, got a piece of it. And basically at that point in time, too, you see the smoke, you see the truck wrecking, you know a caution's going to come out. So I think very few of these drivers lifted. They were basically, keep your foot in the throttle, close your eyes, hope you make it through, because that's positions you could gain.
And realistically, I think a real big winner out of this has to be Tim Nosker. Managed to sneak through a lot of that wreck. Obviously not a top 10, but it could have been 10 times worse. And it's one of those, hey, it's a good enough point stable, we'll get you back in it.
There's the shot from Crivello into McClure that sent him up and over. Glenn Harris gets spun out and him sliding up into the 10 sends Terry Bombard for a barrel roll. 10, I believe, did land on its wheels. It did. He was able to get the truck refired. Chuck McClure looked like his truck was still rolling. See right there, he ended up bringing it to the garage area via the tow. And it looks like he's going to be subsequently finishing in, I believe, the 28th position. So a lot of work to do for the 17 truck. Not outside the realm of possibility that he could still get up inside the top 12 in the points. We ended up seeing Grant Wesley a couple of seasons ago when he ended up winning the championship. He missed the first 3 races of the year. And by the end of the regular season, he was up inside the top 10 in the point standing. So it is still possible. The year is still young, too, so the points are close. So plenty of opportunity to leapfrog your way through the standings if you can put together back-to-back or 3 good races in a row. But the white flag was displayed over the hood of Donnie Garrett. This time, out of turn 4 and through the trioval, the Nature Boy is going to see his first checkered flag, and I can't remember how long. I'm going to have to go back and find out when his last win was, but kind of almost similar to a John Godfrey story, snapping a long winless streak. Garrett will lead 14 laps here tonight. He will lead the all-important final lap of this race. Donnie Garrett, as mentioned, came into this race, I believe it was 17th in the point standings, just below that 12th in the points cut line. He doesn't have to worry about that now. He's just got to stay in the top 20 in points as he's got a checkered flag here tonight at Talladega Super Speedway. And a wild finish here in race number 3. Keith Hughes in second, and John Godfrey, our winner from the last time we were here at Talladega 2 weeks ago, is going to complete the podium. As there you see the congratulatory bumps there. Well, there's always that one driver that gives just a little too hard of a congratulatory bump. This week it's Joe DeSpirito.
I call him brakes.
It's a pre-burnout, right?
Yeah, good enough.
You don't know if they can get it spun out themselves. You're just trying to help them out.
Gotta light him up.
Wesley pulling alongside as Donnie Garrett will bring that number 77 machine to the start-finish line, and the celebration will begin. We'll be talking with him as well as Keith Hughes and John Godfrey in just a moment. Bob Seminara and Greg Palmer were the top 5 when they crossed the line. Well, I guess we won't even wait till the start-finish line to start doing the burnouts. We got all this infield grass in the front straightaway. Let's use it.
Grass outs.
Now he'll bring it down here to the start-finish line and celebrate in front of the Talladega fans. That looks like he might have, yeah, I think he might have shifted to get that thing spun out because that thing's smoking.
Need checking for traction control.
And he'll pull it up there underneath the flag stand and continue to celebrate here tonight at Talladega Superspeedway as he continues the celebration. Let's take a look at the finishing results. We gave you the rundown of the top 5. Rodney Selwyn's going to bring it home in 6th. I want to double check here because Doug Hewlick was 9 points ahead of him for the overall standings, and Hewlick finished in 17th. So we may have a new overall points leader headed into Burnt Screwdrivers Raceway next week in the form of that 38. Seventh place for Joe DeSpirito, Grant Wesley in eighth, ninth for Kelly Causey, and Dave Melson's going to complete the top 10. Bobby Farrell was 11th, Jeremy Jeffries in 12th, Nofsker 13th, Martin 14th, Bernie Mobbs in 15th place. And I think a lot of the 16th on back was where the shuffling took place after the wreck that was happening over in turn one. Robbie Nisus slipped by for 16th, Hewlick in 17th, Schilling, Hagelin, and Cy Jones, the top 20. We know that Brian Schilling got a piece of that incident, still got a top 20. Bob Dixon, Jim Glaude, Jeff Crivello, Terry Bombard, Dante Ricky finished the top 25. And then the last drivers to finish on the lead lap under power were Mark Paglia and Glenn Harris in 26th and 27th. There you see McClure did not reach the checkered flag under power, finishes in 28th. Metallic was able to battle from 9 laps down, nearly going to -4. He finishes in 29th, and the rest of the drivers that didn't reach the conclusion, Wiley Coate, Tom Dixon, Wayne Pribnow, David Cannon, and Jason Scheck. Well, time to head into our FRN post-race wind down and talk with some of the drivers after what took place here this evening at Talladega Superspeedway. And let's kick things off with a guy that we talked to in Victory Lane a couple of weeks ago. Gets another podium finish here tonight, and that's John Godfrey. Hey, John, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRN booth. You got us?
I do, sir. How are you?
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, the last couple of weeks, it was fuel, fuel, fuel. Here tonight, didn't have to worry about that. Got a caution around the point where you guys were right on the mark of making it, so it really came down to positioning yourself, having the friends to be able to get up there to the front. But we were talking about the fact that knowing that this race can end under caution at any point in time once we cross the threshold of the completion of lap 62, how much formulation of strategy was going on there to try and time just the right move in case the caution did fly?
Well, there was plenty of worry before that last caution, Seth. I'll tell you that we were going to be finishing on fumes again, if at all. So that caution was very timely.
Now, I've got to ask, I mean, were you hoping for a little bit more activity up at the front when the caution came out and racing back to the line?
I really was kind of surprised. Bob Seminara and Joe DeSpirito were nose to tail, and they work so well together. And they work very well together. I'm really kind of surprised that they didn't make more of a move, and they left the bottom open for me. That allowed me to get a great run with a lot of help from my buddy Greg Palmer. So, yeah, it was kind of surprising. I expected there to be a lot more craziness when that caution flew.
Now, obviously, you got that golden ticket into the playoffs with the victory in the season opener, giving you a little bit more confidence here in these races heading down the remainder of the regular season. And we kind of saw that here tonight with you in the hunt for the victory again here just 2 weeks removed from getting that checkered flag. I mean, is this going to be a running trend that we continue to see where you're going to be a little bit more riskier in making those moves in the closing stages if you've got a shot to get that second win of the season?
Oh, I sure hope so, Seth. That's what I want to strive for in these next 5 races to get some consistency going. That was a big problem for me last season, so I'm just tickled with tonight's finish.
Well, John, a great run for you. Again, building off of that victory a couple of weeks ago, trying to get yourself as high as you can in the overall point standings. We know that there's a points payout for where you finish in the top 12 in points by the end of the regular season. So we know that's something you're looking for. Obviously, we talked about here tonight as well, the bracket series starting up soon. So trying to get yourself a high seed in that. So looks like this 7-11 is pretty wound up every time we see it here this season. Certainly looking like you're going to be a contender in the playoffs. Congrats on another great run. Before we let you go, the floor is yours for some thank you sponsors and shoutouts.
Well, thank the boys at the shop for another fast truck, LaJoy's for their support, and Town Fair Tire. Thanks to RTG, of course, for putting on this great league, and for the Flatout Racing Network for the outstanding job you guys do on your broadcasts.
It's John Godfrey, another podium finish here this season for the winner of the season opener. He brings home P3 here tonight at Talladega Superspeedway. Congratulations on the great run. Best of luck next week when we head back to BSR.
Thank you so much, guys.
And let's see if we can now dial up the second place driver. Only his second start of the season. Led the most laps here tonight, was in the conversation for the win. Let's dial up Keith Hughes. Hey Keith, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you loud and clear.
Well, man, I'll tell you what, certainly looks like you've taken to this series very well. We saw you make your debut last week, ran inside the top 10 consistently. Here tonight, we saw a little bit more out of this 82 truck. Out in front, led the most laps. Up here in that second position when the caution flew, we knew we were racing back to the proverbial checkers. I mean, what little more could you have done to get alongside of him? Because it kind of looked like you were trying to back off him, try and generate a run, but couldn't seem to take it anywhere.
Yeah, we're teammates, and I didn't want to shove it in there on the inside and end up wrecking us both. I told him I was going to make sure one of us won, so I was going to try to get it coming through out of the tri-oval, but the run just didn't happen. So happy for Donnie getting the win, and I'm excited to get second.
So I've got to ask, what was the thought process there in the back straightaway without not pulling out earlier?
Well, like I said, we were protecting. I was going to protect, make sure one of our teammates won. And Donnie helped me a lot during the race. Like, he was a great pusher when I led all those laps, and he got out in front of me, and I was just going to return the favor. And like I said, I didn't want to cause an issue and take us both out of a chance to win. As long as one of us won, I was happy.
Well, we've seen in the past here a lot of drivers, new faces, make their way into this series, and like you did here tonight, be able to take to the super speedway racing and get comfortable with the drivers in the field and the racing styles and everything very quickly. I know that obviously there's some drivers, as you mentioned, Donnie Garrett, a teammate of yours. I know you've worked with Rodney Sullins and Greg Palmer in the past, so obviously must have been an easy transition moving over to this series. But we've seen drivers be able to make their first starts, be competitors, and make the playoffs in their first season. You've had two good runs here in the first two starts you've made. Are we looking at this 82 to either find victory lane or be up inside the top 12 in the points and battle for the championship in your first full-time season?
Maybe. These guys are tough competitors, so I really can't guarantee anything. Tonight, I was up front a lot and had a lot of help. We'll see what happens. I'm not putting too much pressure on myself or anybody else. Do I want to win? Yeah. Do I want to make the playoffs? Yeah. But I'm here to have fun.
Well, 30 laps led here tonight. A second place finish for you, Keith, in your second start of the season. Congratulations on a job well done. Before we let you go, we're going to turn the mic over to you for some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
All right. First, thank my sponsor, Mountain Ops. And I thank my home league, Mondays of Thunder. They kind of taught me how to super speedway race. So I have a lot of experience over there. We run on Mondays and Sunday nights, and it's a pretty fun league. So that's it. And we thank y'all for putting on a good show, and we'll see you next time.
That's Keith Hughes, brings it home P2 here tonight in his second career start in the Talladega Challenge. Congratulations once again. Best of luck next week as you try and carry this consistency into BSR.
All right. Thank you.
And as we get ready to go down to victory lane, I did find the last victory for one Donnie Garrett. We're in season 58. We have to go all the way back to season 55, where he was a two-time winner. His last victory was the next to last race of the season, playoff race number 4, April 7th of 2022. So a long winless streak broken for driver number 77, and we're going to talk with him right now. Hey, Donnie, Matt, and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you guys.
Well, man, I'll tell you what. A heck of a restart for you there. Able to keep them at bay in the closing stages of this race. We mentioned it just before we brought you in. It's been a bit of a winless streak for this 77 truck. We know you've had some internet connection problems the last couple of seasons. 77 truck looked pretty steady here tonight. You put it in victory lane. How much of a load off your mind is this to finally put this thing back in victory circle and subsequently be finding yourself back in the playoff picture?
Man, I tell you, it's a load off my shoulders, man. I told you at the end of last season I finally got this monkey off my back of this connection issue, and to be watching for me next season. And we're here, and had some. Last week I was leading, coming, hit that bottom, and that wreck happened above me, knocked me out, way back, and then ran out of gas running second or third the week before. So I've been right at the front all these races, and something happened tonight. Man, I had friends behind me, and was able to take that old 77 Astro Glide to the front, and get that win tonight, man. That's a big load off my back. I'll be off in a couple weeks. I'm heading to Punta Cana for a weekend with some great friends and my wife, and so I really needed that win tonight to solidify the playoffs.
So I've got to ask, I mean, were you worried there at the very end when really that huge run was coming on the inside? Do you think maybe, just maybe, they'd get there in time?
No, I had 82 behind me, and I've been working with him. Great. That guy. I mean, I tell you the thing, he's going to win a lot of races here. I mean, it's only his second or third week, and that guy's impressed me tremendously. I've run beside him the last couple of weeks, and I don't impress easy, and he's impressed me. That guy can drive, and I actually had him on whisper tonight, so I was kind of coaching him a little bit when he was out front. I was trying to give him the line to run and trying to help him out, and but I knew if he made a room to the bottom, I was going to block the heck out of him. But he took a little shot there at the end, and I don't blame him. And but I tell you what, I think that boy will get a win for the end of the season. He's definitely got some talent.
Obviously, with the news dropping at the beginning of the season that we've whittled the regular season down from 10 to now 8 races, a little bit more sense of urgency for drivers to find victory lane. I'm going to kind of ask the obligatory question that I've asked the last 2 weeks of the race winners. What is the goal now for the 77 in these final 5 regular season races? Are we looking to get higher up in the overall points to get those bonus points towards the playoffs? Are we looking to put the 77 back in victory lane for another time here during the regular season? Or are we going to have drivers coming up and asking, hey, can you help push me to victory lane and get me a playoff spot in these final 5 weeks?
All of the above. I mean, it's going to be depending on who's around me. I mean, 82 treated me really good tonight, so he's definitely got one coming, a good thing coming. And I had Joe and Bob back there pushing. Had Rodney, John Goffrey, all those guys. All those guys are with me back there, and I knew I was pretty protected up front. And thought maybe they'd make a run to the outside, maybe make it 3 wide and make it a little exciting. But I felt pretty comfortable up there. And but yeah, it's top 10, top 5 of them, and that's my motto for the last 15 years is top 5, top 10s. The rest will take care of itself, and that's how you win championships over here is consistency. Trying to go for a win and getting wrecked just ain't the way to do it, and you've got to be consistent. The talent is just too good here.
Well, we know consistency is going to be very important during the playoffs with the dual season finale, the 2 races in that final round. So, as you said, just top 5 and top 10 them tonight. It panned out for you finding victory lane. Congratulations on a job well done. Great to see that winless streak from early 2022 get snapped here tonight. Before we let you go, though, and continue on your celebration, the floor is yours for some victory lane. Thank you, sponsors, and shout-outs.
Well, of course, I think Astroglide, my sponsor, man, we just slipped through the field. We had that one restart there where me and Chuck started dead last, and I think within 4 laps I was leading, and I drove that thing to the front like I was on a mission. And got to give a shout out. I got to give a shout out to all the drivers, man, around here. These guys are so good. And I mean, we had a little off race tonight, but these guys are amazing drivers. I got to give a shout out to my partners in crime, Court and Lisa, and my wife Janine. We're the ones going to be heading to Punta Cana here in a few weeks, and I'm looking forward to that, man. I need some R&R, and we're gonna party like it's 1999 down there, and get back here and get back to racing and try to win a championship. That's something that's eluded me here on Thursday nights as a championship. I've finished second at least 5, 6, 7 times, but we really want to get that title. And all the admin owners here at RTG, and boy, I tell you, this is an exciting night, man. This is great.
Well, the last time Donnie Garrett went to victory lane, it was a multi-win season. We'll see if down this home stretch of the regular season, he can put the 77 back in victory lane once again. But tonight belongs to Donnie Garrett. Congratulations on a job well done. Best of luck next week as we head to Burt Screwdriver's Raceway for the 2nd time this year.
Woo!
So as the celebration continues for Donnie Garrett, we are 3 for 3 in different drivers going to victory lane. 2 drivers that have snapped winless streaks, 1 driver that has begun his winless streak with his first career victory in Doug Hewlick a couple of weeks ago. But next week, Matt, the flip-flop continues. We're back to Burnt Screwdriver's Raceway, where we ended up seeing last week. It really just came down to positioning, the timing of a caution, and fuel strategy. Didn't talk as much about fuel strategy at the end of the race. We, of course, were definitely driving it home in the beginning and middle portions of the race, wondering if it was going to play a part. So next week, are we looking more like what we saw here tonight of just the positioning, the timing of a caution late, or do we go back to the fuel strategy again?
Obviously, everyone wants to probably, I don't know if I'd say everyone, but a lot of people probably would want fuel strategy just to get to the end of the race. But I'm expecting more of the same, where I see a lot of these guys now really pressing the issue and really trying to get that sense of urgency to get up to the front of the field, at least get those good points or get a win just to lock yourself in.
You talk about that sense of urgency. Now, I know we haven't reached the halfway point of the regular season yet. Next week will be when we reach that mark, 4 races into the 8-race schedule and during the regular season. But for some of the drivers that have not gotten out of the gate with the finishes that they're looking for, you don't necessarily have to win. You've got to, as we heard with Donnie Garrett, top 5, top 10s. The rest will take care of itself. You'll work your way up into the top 12 in the point standings to get into the playoffs. But is it time to hit the panic button for some of these guys yet?
If I was, 30 or 40 points out of the top 12, or at least, really the top 12 or top 20, that's when I'd really be hitting the panic button of, okay, we're effectively going into our halfway mark of the season. I'm almost a full race behind, so we really need to reevaluate what we're doing. We need to reevaluate the program and try to figure out how we're going to get, up to that point. Now, again, if you're in the top 12 or in that top 20 and you're confident that you're going to get a win, which realistically I would not be confident in, I would also be evaluating of, okay, even though I'm in the top 12, I need to go look at my future races and figure out what is the best strategy for me to stay in this top 12 and not really risk it on a bad move.
It's going to be really interesting to continue to follow these storylines heading into the halfway point of the regular season. I can't remember if it's next week or the week following. The bracket series is going to be happening. It's amazing when you talk to the drivers because they focus as much on the bracket series as they do on a race win themselves. They're always watching for whoever it was they're going up against that specific week. So always a lot of fun to follow those 1v1 battles week after week after week as we get closer to the finals in the bracket series, which carry on into the playoffs. Cannot wait to see what happens next week when we head under the lights to the reskin Talladega Burnt Screwdrivers Raceway. We had a thriller of a finish last week in its debut on the schedule. Cannot wait to go back there and see what stories unfold once more. Want to send our well wishes to Jessica Shelton. She was under the weather when she joined me in the broadcast booth last week. Still sick, was not able to be here tonight. But Matt, it was great to have you in the booth here tonight as the fill-in. And man, it was a heck of a night here this evening. Thanks for being here.
It's always nice to kind of knock the rust off.
And thanks to everybody that tuned into our coverage here this evening. Again, next Thursday night, we continue on season 58 of the RTG Talladega Challenge, race number 4 from Burnt Screwdrivers Raceway. Easy for me to say. Green flag scheduled to fly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But for Matthew Rodriguez, I'm Seth Cole. Congratulations to Donnie Garrett on his win here tonight, as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of FRN, the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.